Hey everybody, welcome to the Baseball America Hot Sheet. I'm JJ Cooper, and I'm joined today by Geoff, Pontes, and Jacob Rudner, Baseball America staff, and we are talking all kinds of topics today, but we're starting off with something exciting, which is get ready, because on Wednesday we will roll out the 2026 Top 100 Prospects rankings, and to give a little bit of a sneak peek to that, we'll give you a little bit of a hint. I'm going to tell you right now that Connor Griffin and Kevin McGonigal are going to rank very highly on that list. I don't think that's giving away a whole lot. But I did want to kind of point out something about this, because we've got a lot coming out over the next couple of days at Baseball America, just kind of looking at, we've been doing these lists, the top 100, since 1990 now. So this will be our 37th top 100. And that gives us a lot of kind of historical data. And the thing that I'll just point out is that does jump out from doing a lot of this research is just how high the success rate is for prospects at the top of the top 100. Yes, Brian Taylor many, many years ago did not reach the majors. Yes, Delman Young did not live up to expectations in the 2000s. But if you look in general about the number one, the number two, the number three prospects on the Baseball America Top 100, something that really does stand out is that, like, if Connor Griffin or Kevin McGonigal produced a 20 career WAR season, which that's a very good career. That's the career of someone like Mark Mulder produced that 20 Baseball Reference WAR, or Jermaine Dye produced 20 BREF WAR. That would be a really good career for most people. But if you're a number one, number two, or number three prospect on the Baseball America Top 100, that would actually be falling below the average of what we've seen from those players. Stars do come largely, in a lot of ways, from the top 100, and they come from the top of the top 100. And so if you are a top three prospect, you can kind of expect, they don't all hit it, but you can expect that you're going to see someone who's a long-term regular, often a player who becomes a star. And we would say star, even the elite of the elite. Like if you look at the top 10 players, major league players of the Baseball America Top 100 era, 1990 to present, by WAR, all 10 were top 100 prospects. You look at the top 20, all 20 were top 100 prospects. Most of them came from the top of the top 100. So we did want to kind of just lay that out to start out, that we have the top 100 coming, and pay a whole lot of attention, especially to the top of that top 100. There's a lot there, but we also today rolled out something also exciting. And that's why we have Jacob Rudner here, and we will come back after the first move to take a look at the college top 25. The college top 25 is out. And so UCLA is our number one. LSU is our number two. I just want to start the easy question here, which is, how tough was that? Or was this something where there was a clear number one?
No, there was no clear number one for us this year. And I think that UCLA ended up getting the edge largely because of continuity and path. We view UCLA's path back to Omaha, and to be able to have the number one spot on our rankings throughout the entirety of the year is pretty clean. The Big Ten is not going to provide much resistance, in our opinion. We think Oregon is good. They were one of the teams just off the top 25. But this UCLA team, between the talent it brings back and just having a guy like Rock Chalowski at the front of their lineup, is pretty formidable. So that put them at the top for us. You could easily have debated LSU into that spot. Winning 2 titles in 3 years is no easy feat. We think that they have a chance to go and win it again this year. They would become just the second team in college baseball history since USC in the 1970s to win 3 titles in 4 years. That is within reach. Does that team belong at the top? You could absolutely make that case. But for us, we did go and lean towards what UCLA brings back. How much that team knows about winning, whether it's going to be able to go do it again, is less of a question than whether or not even a team like LSU, which has to go compete in the SEC, a daunting conference, we had a little bit more confidence in UCLA, but it was not much.
So, Geoff, I want to bring you in a little bit on this too, before we dive into a kind of further details on this, which is when you look at kind of the college talent this year, I know that you are already pouring through your spreadsheet. You're already looking ahead, also looking towards the draft. How excited, like, I feel like that this is a group that it's very easy to get excited about.
Yeah, no, I think you look at the top of this draft, especially versus the top of last year's draft. And there's a lot of players, whether it's on the position side, you look at guys like Chalowski, on the pitching side, there's, a tremendous amount of interesting arms. And some of them from mid majors, like a Cam Flukie or, a Jackson Flora, who I know Jacob is a huge fan of. Both of those guys could be really, really interesting players that are getting a lot of buzz heading up to the draft if they come out and perform this year. I think we're seeing more talent get to college, particularly on the pitching side. We're seeing more talent get to college, and there's always a few position players that break out, and it'll be interesting to sort of jump into this group a little bit further. This is a deeper group than we had last year. I'm not ready to necessarily put it above the 2024 group, that produced guys like, Nick Kurtz almost immediately, or the 2023 group that like Paul Skeens.
Well, let me say this, because I think that this was a continuation of what Geoff was saying before we briefly disappeared there. There is a ton of talent in college baseball this year, and I wanted to talk briefly about how that trend is starting to kind of influence the shape of the top of college baseball. We are objectively seeing more great players get to the college ranks. That is the expectation of teams at the professional level. That is the expectation of even the MLBPA is starting to realize that more guys are going to get to college as opposed to being high school draft picks. I will have a story on that over at baseballamerica.com tomorrow on January 20th, just kind of the direction of amateur baseball and how the PA views that. But the bottom line is this. I think that this year we are going to see, even if it isn't a better draft class necessarily than 2024, we will see a lot more talent across the college baseball landscape. We will see how that influences the top of the sport. And I think that it creates a better product. There is a much fiercer debate for the amount of teams that belong potentially in the top 25. And that is largely because of the amount of really good players that are finding their way to college. You look at a team like, as pictured right there, Texas A&M, not in the top 25, largely because of what happened last year. They were our preseason number one. They missed the tournament. But think about the amount of talent that is going to play in Aggie land this year. Chris Akopian comes over from Maryland. He has a chance to be an early first-round pick. Gavin Grahovic, the third baseman, didn't play last year, also has a chance to be a really early draft pick. Center fielder Caden Sorrell as well. That team, not top 25, has easily one of the best three offensive trios in the country. UCSB, Geoff mentioned Jackson Flora. That rotation is easily one of the best in the country, and they weren't in the top 25. Jackson Flora leads it off. Cole Triba is a top 5 rounds prospect going on Saturdays. Calvin Prosky on Sundays is in the same boat. Nathan Aceves is next year's first-round UCSB candidate. So the bottom line is this. I think that college baseball is in a great spot from a talent standpoint. Does it compete every single year, make the draft class better than the one before it? Not necessarily, but I do think that the level of competition in college baseball is being influenced heavily by the amount of talent that's getting to that level of the game.
That also leads to some of the other changes that we've seen in college baseball over the last few years, and we're going to get into that right after this quick break.
Nobody likes a bloated cell phone bill. It can consume you. It can take over. It can be very annoying. So I know that 2025 ended Kratz, and that's when you have your end of year sales, but there actually is still one sale that is running until the end of the month.
Mint Mobile. They still have their 50% off their unlimited premium wireless offer that you got to go and get and take advantage of because it's not necessarily going to be around all the time.
And all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Quit overspending on wireless with 50% off unlimited premium wireless. Plans start at $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Limited time offer. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Over 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com.
So, Jacob, we have UCLA at number one. We've also have the reality that an SEC team, which is the most funded, I'd say the conference that puts more resources into college baseball than anyone else, it's winning basically the College World Series year after year after year after year after year after year after year. I think I got that right for how many straight the SEC has won. We are now in the NIL era in addition to the transfer era. You wrote about this at baseballamerica.com. You've talked to a lot of college coaches about it. And Is UCLA being number one a team that is not one of the big spenders, that is not one that is kind of relying on the made transfers? Is that a sign of a new trend, or are they an outlier? How would you kind of perceive kind of where we are in the NIL landscape?
Well, as far as the top of college baseball goes, I would say that UCLA is cutting against the grain. UCLA was largely built from high school recruiting. We know that. It's evidenced by Rock Chalowski, Mulavai-Levu, who was an All-American for us last year, high school recruit. It's over 90% of that roster came from the high school ranks. They are very selective in the transfer portal, not necessarily because they want to be selective, but because they kind of have to be. They use their top dollars to go get a couple of really good roster influencing type players. Their ace this year, Logan Redeman, is a really good example of that. There were multiple SEC teams that wanted him. UCLA had the funds to make that kind of an addition and beat out some of these schools that had a lot of money to be able to go compete for him. But that being said, is it a trend? No, it's kind of a workaround. UCLA doesn't have the ability to financially compete with some of these SEC schools. They recruit at the high school level really well. This year, that has turned into one of the most experienced rosters in the country with the best player in the country. There is a massive disparity between what teams like UCLA can do and some of these top mid-majors like Coastal Carolina, which was in the national championship last year, versus what the LSUs of the world can do, or any of these SEC teams really that have won a national title consecutively dating back to 2019. It's the longest streak by any conference in the history of college baseball. It belongs to the SEC right now. There is a lot of money flowing through that conference as far as baseball goes, and not a lot of money flowing through other conferences as far as baseball goes. And we'll get into this more in a second here, and I know that you and I have had some conversations offline about it, but I also do think that there's an element within the sport of baseball specifically of kind of choosing your own path. How good do you want to be at college baseball is determined by each institution and how much they want to invest in their individual programs.
So along those lines, you in this piece laid out, Jacob, that there is the other thing that stands out here is that there are numbers. We hear numbers floating all around, how much this player is making or this player is making. But this is not a situation where this is going into some clearinghouse. Kind of point out to that there's a lot of incentive out there among some people involved in this, understandably, to kind of make those numbers seem as large as you can. So how much of a sense do we have? How much did you get from the college coaches on what the range is of what players are making in NIL on the college baseball side?
Yeah, one of the questions I asked college baseball coaches was very simply, what is the largest NIL deal that you've heard of? I didn't ask them what's the largest verified NIL deal you've heard of. It's basically, what is the grapevine telling you is at the top of the market? I had some coaches say that they heard offers over $1 million, 1.1 million was the highest offer. I had a couple coaches say that $250,000 was the highest that they heard a player earned in the sport. It kind of goes to show you there is a massive disparity between what coaches are hearing, what they're able to verify, and of course, a little bit of that depended on how they interpreted the question. I'm assuming that several of the coaches who I spoke with took the question to mean, what's the largest deal that maybe you've paid, or what's the largest deal that you've been able to verify? But at the end of the day, it does go to show that there is such a wide range of potential payment outcomes. Some schools are investing huge, and they're paying players massive amounts of dollars, first round caliber money, to be able to get into their school and to go and influence their baseball programs. Whereas we're seeing other schools existing at the $250,000 mark for the highest deal that they've ever heard of. And to your point, JJ, there is a level of influence from agents to kind of manipulate these numbers. Because somebody said that they've heard of a $1.1 million deal does not in any way mean that that $1.1 million deal either A, existed, or B, was signed. It means that somebody said that it existed and was potentially signed, but because there are no public contracts or really any regulation as far as the system goes, there's no way to verify any of that. It is all rumor-based numbers. No contracts, no publicly reported numbers that are accurate for sure. We can all kind of assume things, but the range is massive, and I'm assuming what's going on behind the scenes reflects that as much as it did in our story.
So, along those lines, are we in a situation now where you laid it out? UCLA is one of the ones that's out there kind of developing kind of signing out of high school and then developing them. Is that something that is kind of a viable path for most, or is it something where we're now in a position where you really, as a as a college institution, if you want to compete in college baseball, the cost you have to realize is going to be higher than it was. And we should point out that we've also gone from the 11.7 scholarship era, an era that was around for a very, very long time, to an era where whether you go to the full limit at 34 or you go somewhere, in between, there's many more scholarships also out there now than there was basically just, a year ago.
I think that it's kind of a difficult question to answer because viability to me is all dependent upon how good you are at a certain type of recruiting. UCLA has proven to be an expert in identifying, getting to campus, high school talent. The roster that they have right now is proof of that. Rock Chalowski alone to me is proof of that. There is a power conference team, which I will not name right now, that is operating with roughly 14 scholarships and about $150,000 between revenue share and NIL. That pales in comparison to what other counterparts are spending in college baseball. They have proven to be reasonably competitive, getting into regionals in recent years, but that's not competing for a College World Series. Does that mean that it's not viable or they're not doing a good job? No, not at all. I think that they're making the most of what they have available to them in a really strong conference. So does that make it viable? It kind of in the eyes of the beholder. If making a regional is above your program standard, yeah, it's viable. If competing for a College World Series is the standard, no, it's certainly not, because you have schools like LSU or Mississippi State or Texas A&M or Texas that are able to go out there and simply buy the best players. And that's no knock against a coach like Jay Johnson, who you will see over the course of the next couple of weeks in the lead up to the season. We believe very strongly to be one of the best college baseball coaches of all time. And that doesn't get dampened in any sort of way because he has the money to spend on his roster. It simply enhances what he's capable of doing. So to be clear, it's not a knock, but I do think that when you combine elite coaching with elite resources, it becomes extremely difficult to overcome. And so for some of these schools, is it viable to go and compete because you're going to recruit high school at a rate that is way above other power conference and contending schools? I don't think so. I think you have to be pretty special to make it truly national championship caliber viable. But I do think that there's a path to the postseason, to the field of 64, where everybody technically has a chance. We saw Murray State reach the College World Series last year by cutting against the grain and maybe doing things a little bit differently.
So the college game is where we've seen a lot of great two-way players in recent, in every year, but in recent years especially. You can even point out someone like Paul Skeens, who was a catcher / DH / right-handed pitcher at Air Force, Nolan McLean. We talked about Peyton Tolley. We could talk about Carson Bench. So many of them. We don't see it all that often, though, on the pro side if your name is not Shohei Ohtani. But the A's are looking at doing that with a prospect of their own. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. So, guys, we have Shotaro Mori, the number 11 prospect of Baseball America Top 30, is expected to be a two-way player who's going to pitch once a week while also playing shortstop or DH on non-pitching days. Geoff, I will just ask you to kind of start this off. How skeptical are you that this will actually continue for the entirety of 26, but especially if we're talking at this time in 27, do you think he's still going to be a two-way player?
No, I tend to think that this is such a rare thing. And we certainly saw it with, Shohei Ohtani. The last time it had been done in a real way was with Babe Ruth. We're talking 100-year span of time that we did not see this in our game, when things are ever evolving. There's always new information, new technology, new approaches, new ideas. And it's just such a rare, difficult thing to do. The idea that somebody could, potentially close, like what Zach Neto, another two-way guy in college, where someone is a full-time position player and then maybe could be a relief pitcher. I think there's maybe a possibility there. The idea that we're going to see another guy who can be, an average major league hitter or thereabouts and an average major league hitter or a pitcher or thereabouts, just really, really hard for me to picture that. Even beyond the development, where it's so hard to develop into a major league pitcher or to develop into a major league position player, there's the injury risk. We can just look back at a guy like, Brandon McKay, who was as good of a two-way player as we've seen come out of the college game. No disrespect to Paul Skeens or Nolan McLean. I don't think that we thought there was a realistic opportunity for them to do both. With McKay, I mean, he did hit up until AAA and had some games where he just hit for stretches and then pitched. We thought there was maybe a possibility there, and he really broke down and has really been never able to recapture any of his standing, even whether it's as a pitcher or as a hitter. He kind of put hitting aside. I just think it's really tough to develop it both and stay healthy, and it's why we don't see it in the professional game all that often.
The thing with Morey here that also stands out that makes this even tougher, right, is that he's a shortstop. We saw this recently with Sheng-Ing Lin with the Reds as well. Mason Wynn, the Cardinals talked about doing this with him early in his career. And by the way, that guy was going to be 100 off the mound if he did it. But the problem you really have is that this, if you are going to make this work, Shohei Ohtani has made it work. And he did play outfield early in his MPB career. But you're kind of going to be a DH pitcher because almost anywhere other than maybe first base, it's going to ask too much of your arm, right? So you're not going to pitch and also play shortstop. You're not going to pitch and even play in the outfield and have to make a throw from the outfield the day after, you just went 60 pitches or whatever. So it really only is a very small subset that can make it kind of work from the standpoint of if you are playing a position where your defensive value is a key part of you being a position player, it's really hard to make that work and be a pitcher at the same time. The closest thing we've seen are the pitchers who maybe can play in the outfield a little bit. We saw the Michael Lorenzens in the world like that. But then even when a guy like Jake Cronenworth, who was a pitcher at Michigan, who then was a position player for the Rays as a prospect, and then went back to pitching in AAA, usually very quickly you end up shifting to, okay, which one are you going to do? So we've seen a lot of candidates to do this over the years, but we haven't seen a lot of guys do it. Okay, I want to ask you a fun one on this. If you could have one guy, though, we went off through a number of names of guys who we have tried to do it or thought about doing it, or that we've seen do it in college. Jacob, I'll start with you. Who's your favorite two-way player that you've seen over your years or that you wish got to keep doing two-way play?
Hard as the college guy to not say Jack Caglione. I mean, it was a pretty spectacular thing to watch when he was doing it in college. It was never really going to be a thing as a pro. There were some, rumors about maybe some arm troubles that were going to prevent it from happening. Would I have loved to have seen it? Heck yeah. I mean, we're talking about somebody who was tickling triple digits from the left side, had a pretty real changeup, and when he was healthy, looked pretty dominant on the mound. And then obviously the bat is the bat. Watch him hit some of the furthest balls I've ever seen in a college baseball game. So that would have been pretty cool. See that keep going.
Okay, Geoff, what about you?
I'm going to go on the high school side. I think it's Mason Wynn, frankly. We see a lot of these two-way guys, right? We saw it this year with like Josh Hammond. We saw it this year with Josh Owens. I promise there's other two-way players in the high school ranks that get drafted that are two-way guys that aren't named Josh. But I think it's Mason Wynn. Like watching that tape, because that was a 2020 draft. We had a lot of time to ourselves to dig into video. It was tough for me to decide which side I thought he should go. And I want to be honest, there might have been some parts of me that leaned pitcher. It was loud and really athletic. As you mentioned, triple digits. Remember, it was a banger breaking ball as well. And the swing wasn't where it is now. You could believe in the athlete, but it took Mason Wynn a few years to kind of get to the point that he was a pretty good contact hitter. And obviously he's been able to sustain that throughout the entirety of his professional career up to this point. But I think for me, it would be that guy, just because he really can hit, he really can play shortstop, and he had legitimate closer stuff.
Okay, you stole mine because I was going to say Mason Wynn. Also, I completely believe that he could have been an MLB closer. If again, he's been 100 from shortstop. I think he could have been easily 100 off the mound with a good breaking ball. But you say that, I'm going to go a surprising one and point out that for all we've seen from Austin Riley with the Braves third baseman, as far as his production at third base, the power that he has, Austin Riley was also, like, a lot of teams liked him as a pitcher coming out of high school more than they did as a hitter. It was a little bit unconventional. There's going to be a pitch that he was going to be a hitter. And I will point out, he's not the only one. The Braves done this a couple of times because Freddie Freeman was a good pitcher as well. Seth Fernandez, pretty good shortstop in in high school, I should say, as well. It's a fun topic. We do hope that we will eventually see a guy actually develop as a two-way player. But yes, we are skeptical about this because we've just heard it time after time after time. I should point out Casey Kelly, one other guy, first-round pick, who did start by doing both. But in reality, the Red Sox wanted him to scratch the itch of being a position player and very quickly move to the mound. That happens a lot more often. So we thank you for joining us here on the Hot Sheet Show today, and do want to offer a reminder that we have the top 100 dropping on Wednesday, and you should check out on our YouTube channel. We will have top 100 content here as well. Guys, I'm going to tell you, we're not going to give you the whole top 100 on the YouTube channel, but we will give you good pieces of it. And we have so much more over at baseballamerica.com. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week on the next Hot Sheet Show.